I pulled up to my house after a 12-hour shift at the construction site, covered in dust and sweat, and found everything I owned piled on the front lawn. My mother stood on the porch next to her new husband, Gary, and his 3 teenage kids, all of them staring at me like I was a stranger. Mom cleared her throat and said I needed to leave immediately because Gary's children needed more space. When I reminded her my late father left me this house in his will 5 years ago, she waved her hand dismissively and said, "Gary handled the paperwork months ago, that I signed my rights away." I stood there staring at my entire life scattered across the grass. My hands were shaking as I started loading boxes into the bed of my pickup truck. Neighbors stood on their porches watching the scene unfold. Mrs. Patterson from next door had known me since I was 8 years old, and I could see the confusion on her face. Gary stood there with his arms crossed over his chest, tapping his foot like I was taking too long to vacate his property. My property. The house my father built with his own hands over the course of 2 years. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. But Mom would not even look at me. She kept her eyes on the ground, fidgeting with her wedding ring. The new one Gary gave her 6 months ago when they got married in some quick courthouse ceremony I was not even invited to. It took me 3 hours to load everything. My clothes, my books, the photo albums from when Dad was still alive, his old toolbox that I kept in the garage. Gary's oldest son, a kid named Trent who was maybe 17, smirked at me the whole time. At one point he whispered something to his siblings, and they all laughed. By the time I finished, it was dark. I drove to my best friend Jake's apartment across town and knocked on his door at 9:30 at night. Jake took one look at my face and let me in without asking questions. He helped me unload the truck and told me I could crash on his couch as long as I needed. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Something was wrong. My father had been very clear when he died 5 years ago from a heart attack. The house was mine. He made sure of it. He knew how much that place meant to me. Every wall had a memory. The kitchen where he taught me to cook scrambled eggs when I was 9. The backyard where we built a treehouse together. The garage workshop where he showed me how to use a circular saw and a drill press. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and started going through the boxes I had thrown together. I found the folder with all my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, high school diploma, and there it was. The copy of Dad's will. I read through it 3 times, crystal clear. The house at 427 Maple Street was left to Fernando Martinez, me. No conditions, no stipulations. But then I found other papers mixed in, documents I did not recognize. My signature was on them, but I had no memory of signing anything related to the house. I stared at those pages until my eyes burned. Then it hit me. Thanksgiving. 6 months ago, Gary had shown up to dinner with a briefcase full of papers. He said something about insurance documents that needed signatures. The football game was on television. The Dallas Cowboys were playing, and I was distracted, half watching the game while Gary pushed papers in front of me. He pointed to signature lines and I signed without really reading. He said it was just standard stuff. Insurance beneficiaries, nothing important. I felt sick. Had I really been that careless? That stupid? The next morning Jake made coffee, and I told him everything. He listened quietly, then said I needed to check the official records. So I drove to the county clerk's office as soon as they opened. The woman behind the counter looked up the property address. She clicked through her computer, then printed out a document and slid it across to me. It was a quitclaim deed, dated 3 months ago, transferring ownership of 427 Maple Street from Fernando Martinez to Linda Martinez, my mother. The signature looked almost exactly like mine. Almost. But I had never signed this document. I had never transferred anything. The clerk explained that someone had filed it legally, and it was now part of the official record. If I wanted to challenge it, I would need to file a lawsuit. My stomach dropped. A lawsuit meant lawyers. Lawyers meant money. Money I did not have. I called my mother from the parking lot. She answered on the 4th ring. "Mom, I just saw the county records. There's a quitclaim deed with my signature transferring the house to you. I never signed that." Her voice was tight. "Gary explained it to me. Fernando, you agreed to put the house in my name for tax purposes. It makes things simpler. I never agreed to anything. That's not my signature. Gary said you signed it at Thanksgiving. You just don't remember. Mom, listen to me. I would never give away Dad's house. Something is wrong here. Before she could respond, I heard Gary's voice in the background. Is that him? Give me the phone. There was a shuffling sound. Then Gary's voice came through, smooth and confident. Fernando, you need to stop harassing your mother. You signed the paperwork. It's legal and binding. If you keep causing problems, things are going to get ugly for you. Understand? He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my truck staring at my phone. My mother had been completely turned against me. Gary had somehow convinced her that I was the problem, that I was the one causing trouble. I used most of my savings to retain an attorney named Patricia Hughes. She had good reviews online and specialized in property disputes. When I showed her the documents, she examined them carefully and said she was confident the signature was forged. But she warned me the legal process would take time, months, maybe longer, and it would not be cheap. I did not care about the money. This was my father's house. My house. I would fight for it. Patricia filed a lawsuit 2 days later, challenging the quitclaim deed and requesting a forensic handwriting analysis. The filing fee alone was $800. She said her retainer would be $5,000 to start. I emptied my savings account and picked up a second job doing overnight security at a warehouse to cover her fees. For 2 weeks, I worked 16-hour days. Construction from 6 in the morning until 6 at night, then security from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. I slept in 4-hour chunks and lived on coffee and gas station sandwiches. Jake told me I looked terrible, but I did not care. Every dollar I earned went toward the legal fight. Then Jake called me during my lunch break on a Tuesday. His voice was urgent. Fernando, you need to get over to Maple Street right now. Something's happening at the house. I drove there as fast as I could without getting pulled over. When I turned onto my street, I saw a construction dumpster in the driveway and a contractor's truck parked on the curb. The front door was open and I could hear power tools inside. I parked across the street and walked up to the house, my heart pounding. Gary's car was not there, just the contractor's. I stepped through the front door, and what I saw made me want to throw up. They were gutting my childhood bedroom. The walls were torn open, exposing the studs. The hardwood floor my father had installed himself was ripped up in sections. Insulation and drywall dust covered everything. 2 men in work boots were carrying out sections of drywall and throwing them into the dumpster. What are you doing? I asked. One of them looked up. Renovation. The owner hired us to modernize the place. I'm the owner. He shrugged. Lady named Linda signed the contract. Said her son used to live here but moved out. I walked through the rest of the house. The bathroom my father retiled when I was 12 was being demolished. The kitchen cabinets he built by hand were gone, replaced with cheap prefab units. But the worst part was the garage, Dad's workshop. Every single tool was gone. The workbench he made from reclaimed oak, the pegboard where he hung his hand saws and hammers, the rolling toolbox that had belonged to his father. All of it vanished. I went outside to the backyard. The oak tree, the one Dad planted the day I was born. He used to measure my height against it every birthday. It was gone. Just a stump remained, and someone had poured concrete over it. I took photos of everything with my phone, then called Patricia. She told me to document it all and send her the pictures. She filed an emergency motion to stop any further alterations to the property. But 2 days later, the judge denied it. Technically, my mother was the legal owner according to the recorded deed. She had the right to renovate. That same afternoon, a sheriff's deputy knocked on Jake's door and handed me a document, a restraining order. Gary had filed a petition claiming I had threatened him and his family. The order prohibited me from coming within 500 feet of the property at 427 Maple Street. I read it 3 times. None of it was true. I had never threatened anyone. But there it was, signed by a judge, legally binding. Patricia explained that restraining orders were easy to obtain if someone claimed they felt threatened. The burden of proof was low. Gary had played the system perfectly. Now, I could not even drive past my own house without risking arrest. I tried calling my mother again. Gary answered. "You got the restraining order?" His voice was cheerful, almost playful. "I never threatened anyone. Doesn't matter what you think. It matters what the judge believes. And the judge believes me. Stay away from the property, Fernando. Or you'll end up in jail. Let me talk to my mom." He laughed. "Your mom doesn't want to talk to you. She's done with your drama. Just put her on the phone." There was a pause. Then Mom's voice came through. She sounded tired and stressed. "Fernando, you need to let this go. For the sake of the family." "What family, Mom? He's destroying everything Dad built. Gary knows what he's doing. We're making the house better. It needed updating anyway. He cut down Dad's tree." Silence. "Mom, he cut down the oak tree. The one Dad planted when I was born." Her voice cracked slightly. "It was diseased. Gary said it was a safety hazard. It was not diseased. It was perfectly healthy. Fernando, I have to go. Please stop calling." She hung up. That evening I scrolled through social media and found Gary's oldest son Trent's Instagram page. He had posted photos from inside the house, pictures of him and his siblings partying in what used to be my bedroom. The caption read, "New place, new life. Upgrade complete." The comments were full of his friends congratulating him on the nice house. No one knew it was stolen from me. Patricia called me the next day with more bad news. She said Gary seemed to understand exactly how to manipulate the legal system. His restraining order made it nearly impossible for me to gather evidence or inspect the property. The judge had scheduled a hearing for January, which was still 3 months away, and the forensic handwriting analysis was going to cost another $3,000. I was running out of money, running out of options, and running out of hope. I pushed through the exhaustion, working both jobs, barely sleeping. My body was running on fumes, but I kept telling myself it would be worth it. Once we got to the hearing in January, once the forensic analyst proved the signature was forged, everything would be set right. 3 weeks into the lawsuit, my boss at the construction company called me into his office. His name was Harold, a good man who had hired me right out of trade school 8 years ago. He looked uncomfortable. "Fernando, I got to talk to you about something serious." I sat down across from his desk, confused. "I got an anonymous tip yesterday. Someone said you've been stealing equipment from job sites." My blood went cold. "That's not true. I would never do that." Harold sighed and turned his computer monitor toward me. On the screen was security camera footage from one of our job sites. The video showed me loading tools into the back of my truck. Drills, saws, extension cords. "I can explain that. You told me I could borrow those tools for a weekend project at home. Remember? 2 months ago. I brought them all back on Monday." "I remember. But this footage has been edited to make it look like you were stealing. Someone sent it to our main office with a complaint." "Who?" "Anonymous email. But Fernando, corporate is involved now. They're saying, I have to let you go. I'm sorry. I tried to argue, tried to explain, but it did not matter. The decision was already made." Harold gave me my final paycheck and told me to clear out my locker. I walked out of that building in a daze. I had worked there for 8 years, never missed a day, never caused problems. And now my reputation was destroyed over doctored security footage. That night, the security company called. They had done a background check after hearing about the theft allegation at my other job. They said they could not employ someone with questions about their integrity. I was fired from the overnight security position, too. In one day, I lost both sources of income. Patricia was suspicious. She said the timing was too convenient. She started digging into Gary's background and discovered he used to work as a paralegal in Nevada before getting disbarred for ethical violations. He knew how the legal system worked. He knew how to manipulate it. She found more records. Gary had been married before, twice. Both times to widows with assets. Both marriages ended with the women filing for protective orders and Gary disappearing with their money. There was a warrant for his arrest in Arizona on fraud charges, but he had been using different names and staying one step ahead of law enforcement. I brought this information to my mother. I found her in a grocery store parking lot, made sure to stay more than 500 feet from wherever Gary might be. I showed her the court documents on my phone, the records from Arizona, the disbarment papers from Nevada. Mom looked at the screen, then looked at me. Her face was pale. Gary explained all of this to me already. He was falsely accused. Those women were lying. Mom, there's a pattern. He targets widows. He takes their money. He's doing the same thing to you. She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. You don't understand. I'm pregnant with Gary's baby. The world tilted. I grabbed the side of my truck to steady myself. You're what? I'm pregnant. 8 weeks. Gary and I are starting a family. A real family. And I need you to accept that. Mom, please listen to me. He's dangerous. No, Fernando. You're the one being dangerous. You're the one harassing us. Gary's been good to me. He takes care of me. And now we're having a baby together. I'm choosing my new family. You need to accept it and move on. She walked away, got into her car, and drove off. I sat in my truck in that parking lot for an hour, trying to process what she had just told me. My mother was pregnant with this con artist's child, or at least she believed she was. I did not know what was real anymore. When I got back to Jake's apartment, there was an eviction notice taped to his door. The landlord had received a formal complaint that I was dangerous and unstable. Gary had somehow tracked me down and poisoned that well, too. The notice said I had to vacate the premises within 72 hours or Jake would face eviction as well. Jake came home from work and saw the notice. He looked at me with genuine regret. Fernando, I'm sorry, man. I can't lose my apartment. I can't afford to move right now. I understand. It's not your fault. I packed my belongings that night and moved them into my truck. I drove to a 24-hour gym and signed up for a month-to-month membership so I could shower. Then I found a Walmart parking lot where they allowed overnight parking and made my truck my new home. I was 32 years old, living in my vehicle, with no job, no home, and no family support. Gary had systematically destroyed every aspect of my life, and I still had no idea how to stop him. Living in my truck was harder than I expected. The November cold seeped through the cab at night, even with blankets. I parked in different locations to avoid suspicion. Some nights at Walmart, some nights at a rest stop, some nights in a church parking lot. I used the gym for showers and charging my phone. I picked up odd jobs through a day labor service, making just enough money for food and gas. My Aunt Carmen called me 3 weeks after I lost my jobs. She was my father's younger sister, and we used to be close, but her voice on the phone was cold. Fernando, I've been hearing some very disturbing things about you. What things? That you've been harassing your mother and her husband. That you've been making threats. That you stole from your employer. None of that is true. Gary has been spreading lies about me. Why would he do that? Because he's a con artist, Aunt Carmen. He forged my signature and stole my house. I've been trying to get it back through the legal system. She was quiet for a moment. Fernando, your mother told me you've been unstable since your father died, that you've been having trouble accepting her new marriage. Maybe you should consider talking to someone. A therapist. I'm not unstable. I'm being set up. I think you need help, sweetheart. Real help. I'm sorry, but I can't be involved in whatever is going on with you right now. I hope you get better. She hung up before I could say anything else. I checked the family group chat that I had been part of since high school, the one where we shared photos and planned holiday gatherings. I had been removed from it. My cousin Rachel, who I grew up with, would not return my calls. My Uncle David blocked my number. Gary had poisoned my entire extended family against me. He had spread his lies so thoroughly that no one believed my side of the story. I was completely isolated. Thanksgiving approached. This was the worst part. For years, I had hosted Thanksgiving dinner at the house on Maple Street. It was tradition. I would deep fry a turkey in the backyard, and family would bring side dishes. We would eat in the dining room where my father used to sit at the head of the table. On Thanksgiving Day, I could not help myself. I drove past the house, staying well beyond the 500-foot boundary of the restraining order. I parked 3 blocks away and walked to where I could see the property. Cars lined the street. Gary's extended family had taken over my tradition. I could see people through the windows, laughing and eating. Mom was in the kitchen, wearing an apron, serving food. Gary stood next to her with his arm around her waist, playing the role of loving husband and gracious host. It should have been me in there. It should have been my family gathering. My tradition. I walked back to my truck and sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Patricia called me the following week with more bad news. The forensic handwriting analysis had come back inconclusive. The signature on the quitclaim deed was close enough to my actual signature that the analyst could not definitively say it was forged. Someone had practiced. Someone had studied my handwriting and replicated it almost perfectly. The judge had scheduled the hearing for mid-January, but Patricia warned me that without conclusive forensic evidence, the case was going to be difficult to win. I would need to prove fraud through other means, and that would require more time, more investigation, more money. Money I no longer had. I told Patricia I could not afford to keep her on retainer anymore. She understood. She said she would do what she could to prepare for the January hearing, but after that I would be on my own. I spent December doing day labor jobs, construction cleanup, moving furniture, whatever paid cash at the end of the day. I saved every penny I made, living on dollar menu food and sleeping in my truck. 2 days before Christmas, I was working a construction cleanup job at a commercial site. I had not eaten much in 2 days because I was trying to save money. Around noon, I started feeling dizzy. The world went gray around the edges. I remember one of the other workers yelling something, and then I woke up on the ground with paramedics standing over me. They took me to the emergency room. Dehydration and malnutrition, the doctor said. They gave me IV fluids and kept me for observation. A social worker came to my bedside and asked if I had family who could help me. No, I told her. No family. She gave me information about homeless shelters and food banks. I nodded and thanked her, but inside I felt completely hollow. This was my life now. Homeless, alone, defeated. They released me after a few hours. The hospital bill was going to be $2,000 that I did not have. I walked out of that emergency room and headed toward my truck, which was parked 3 blocks away. As I was walking past a convenience store, I saw someone I recognized. Danny, one of Gary's sons. The middle kid, maybe 15 years old. He was standing outside the store alone, smoking a cigarette, looking upset about something. I almost kept walking, but something made me stop. Danny? He looked up, startled. When he recognized me, his expression changed. Not hostile like his brother Trent, more like guilty. You're Fernando, right? Yeah. You okay? He took a drag from his cigarette and looked away. Not really. I should have walked away. Getting caught talking to Gary's kid could violate the restraining order if Gary wanted to push it. But Danny looked genuinely distressed. What's wrong? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Gary's not who he pretends to be. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? He was married to my mom 10 years ago. He was horrible to her. Took all her money, hit her a few times. She finally got away from him, but it messed her up bad. She's been in and out of rehab since then. That's why I'm stuck living with him now. I got nowhere else to go. I'm sorry. He keeps this office in the basement. He's always down there on his computer, printing stuff, important papers and things. He's planning something. I can tell. Before I could ask more, headlights swept across us. Gary's black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Danny's face went pale. I got to go. Wait. Danny, if you ever need help. But Gary was already getting out of the vehicle, his face dark with anger. He grabbed Danny by the arm, not gently. What did I tell you about talking to strangers? We were just, get in the car. Now, Gary looked at me with pure hatred. You're violating the restraining order. I'm more than 500 feet from the property. Doesn't matter. You approached my son. That's harassment. He shoved Danny toward the SUV, then turned back to me. I could call the cops right now and have you arrested, but I'm feeling generous. Disappear, Fernando. Or next time, I won't be so nice. They drove away, and I stood there in the parking lot, shaking. But something Danny had said stuck with me. Gary had an office in the basement with important papers. If I could somehow get access to those documents, maybe I could find proof of his fraud, proof that would hold up in court. It was a desperate idea, a dangerous idea, but I was running out of options. I found Danny's social media account that night and sent him a careful message. Nothing that could be used against me if Gary saw it. Just, if you ever need anything, I'm here. 3 days later, Danny messaged me back. Danny and I started messaging through a gaming app where conversations disappeared after 24 hours. He was careful, only reaching out when Gary was not around. Over the course of a week, he told me more about Gary's past. Gary had targeted Danny's mother, whose name was Sharon, right after her husband died in a car accident. Sharon had a life insurance payout and owned her house outright. Within 6 months of marrying her, Gary had drained her bank accounts and convinced her to sign the house over to him. Then he started getting physically abusive. When Sharon tried to leave, Gary emptied her bank accounts and disappeared. Sharon pressed charges, but Gary had moved to a different state and was using a different name. She never recovered from the trauma, started using drugs to cope with the pain, eventually lost custody of Danny and his siblings. He does this, Danny wrote. He finds women who just lost their husbands, widows with money. My mom tried to warn people, but nobody believed her because Gary's good at making people think he's the victim. How did you end up living with him? I asked. Mom went to rehab again in September. I didn't have anywhere else to go. Child Services tracked down Gary, and he agreed to take me in. He acts all nice in front of social workers, but when they're gone, he's different. Does he hurt you? Not really. He mostly ignores me. But I see what he's doing to your mom. Same thing he did to mine. He's got her convinced that everyone else is lying and he's the only one who cares about her. Over the next few days, Danny gave me more information. The office in the basement had a fireproof safe where Gary kept all his important documents. Danny did not know the combination, but he had seen Gary open it a few times. Gary was also in contact with a real estate agent. He was planning to sell the house. When I saw the for sale sign go up in front of my house 2 days before Christmas, I felt panic rising in my chest. If Gary sold the house before the January hearing, my legal case would become exponentially more complicated. Patricia had explained that once a property changed hands to a third-party buyer, unwinding that sale was nearly impossible. I called Patricia and told her about the sale sign. She filed an emergency motion to block the sale, but she warned me it was a long shot. Judges were reluctant to interfere with property transactions unless there was clear and convincing evidence of fraud. I was out of time and out of options. That's when Danny sent me a message that changed everything. He's taking everyone to Christmas Eve service at 7. They'll be gone for at least 2 hours. I can let you in the back door. You can look at the safe. I stared at that message for a long time. This was incredibly risky. If I got caught in the house, I would be arrested for violating the restraining order and for breaking and entering. My legal case would be destroyed. I could go to jail, but if I did nothing, Gary would sell the house and disappear with the money, and I would lose everything my father left me. I called Patricia and told her what Danny had offered. She was adamant. Fernando, do not do this. It's a trap. If you go into that house, Gary will have everything he needs to put you in prison. Please, just wait for the hearing. We'll figure something out. If he sells the house before the hearing, what then? She was quiet. That's what I thought, I said. Christmas Eve arrived. I drove to a street behind Maple Street and parked several blocks away. Danny sent me coordinates and told me to wait until he saw everyone leave. At 7:15, I got the message. They're gone. Come now. Back door. I walked through 3 backyards to get to the house, staying low, my heart hammering. Danny opened the back door and let me inside. The house smelled different. New paint, new carpet. Nothing like the home I grew up in. The safe is in the basement, Danny whispered. I'll keep watch upstairs. I followed him down the basement stairs. The space had been converted into an office. There was a desk with a computer and a printer. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and in the corner, a small fireproof safe. I don't know the combination, Danny said. I tried a few obvious numbers. Birthdays, addresses. Nothing worked. I was about to give up when I heard something that made my blood freeze. A car door slamming. Upstairs. In the driveway. Danny's eyes went wide. They weren't supposed to come back yet. We heard voices. Gary's voice, loud and annoyed. I forgot the checkbook. We need it for the donation. Footsteps on the floor above us. Danny looked at me in panic. "Hide," he whispered. But there was nowhere to hide in that office. And then I heard Gary's footsteps coming toward the basement stairs. I made a split-second decision. I could run and maybe get out the back door before he saw me, or I could stay and confront him, though that would mean almost certain arrest. Gary appeared at the top of the stairs. He saw me immediately, and then he smiled. It was not a surprised smile. It was a satisfied smile, like he had been expecting this. Well, breaking and entering, violating a restraining order. This is even better than I hoped. Danny stepped forward. He didn't break in. I let him in. Gary ignored him. He pulled out his phone and started recording video. I'm standing in my basement, and Fernando Martinez has broken into my home. I feel threatened. He's trespassing. That signature on the quitclaim deed is forged, I said. You know it. I know it. This house belongs to me. Gary walked down the stairs, still recording. You're delusional, Fernando. The house belongs to your mother, legal and binding. And now you've committed a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. I'm calling the police. He pulled out his other phone with his free hand and dialed. I heard him tell the dispatcher that an intruder was in his home and he needed police immediately. Danny looked at me with genuine fear. I'm sorry. I thought he'd be gone longer. I had seconds to decide. If I stayed, I was going to jail. If I ran, I was still probably going to jail, but at least I would have a few more hours of freedom. I ran. I bolted up the stairs, past Gary through the kitchen, out the back door. I heard Gary yelling behind me, but I did not stop. I sprinted through the backyard, over the fence, through the neighbor's yard, and kept running until I reached my truck 4 blocks away. I started the engine and drove. I did not know where I was going. I just drove. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Patricia, Fernando, what did you do? I messed up. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Burglary, trespassing, violating a restraining order. This is bad. This is really, really bad. I pulled into a motel parking lot on the outskirts of town. I had to try. He's selling the house. I'm out of options. Now you have no options. If you turn yourself in, you're looking at jail time. And your case is dead. The judge will throw it out. Gary played you perfectly. I hung up and checked into the motel with cash, using a fake name. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Gary had won. He had outmaneuvered me at every turn. I was wanted by the police. I had no money, no home, no family support, and in a few weeks, he would sell my father's house and disappear with the money, just like he had done to Danny's mother, and who knows how many other women. I thought about giving up, about turning myself in and accepting that I had lost. Maybe jail was where I deserved to be for being so stupid, so careless, so easily manipulated. I lay down on that cheap motel bed and closed my eyes. And then my phone buzzed. It was 3 in the morning when the text came through. An unknown number. No words, just a series of photos. I opened them with shaking hands, squinting at the screen in the dark motel room. The first photo was a document. A quitclaim deed from a property in Arizona. Different name, different address, but the same format as the one Gary had used on me. The signature at the bottom looked legitimate, but I knew better now. The second photo was a bank statement, showing a wire transfer of $87,000. The account holder's name was Patricia Donovan. I did not recognize the name, but the transaction was labeled Property Sale Proceeds. The third photo made my hand start shaking. It was a driver's license. The photo showed Gary's face, but the name read Marcus Eldridge. Different name, same con artist. More photos kept loading. 7 different quitclaim deeds from 7 different properties across 4 states. Each one involved a recently widowed woman. Each one showed suspicious transfers of property and money. Each one had Gary's face attached to different identities. But the worst photos came last. A life insurance policy on my mother. $500,000. Beneficiary, Gary Patterson. The policy had been taken out 3 weeks ago. Text messages between Gary and someone named Vincent. The messages were chilling. Linda's getting suspicious. Asking too many questions about the Arizona situation. Handle it like we discussed. Make it look natural. The kid's still a problem. Once the house sells, the kid won't matter. We'll be gone. What about Linda? She's worth more dead than alive. Wait until after the sale closes. Then we move forward with the plan. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Gary was planning to kill my mother. This was not just fraud. This was premeditated murder. Another photo showed medical records. Prescription medications for my mother. But when I looked closer, I saw handwritten notes in the margins. Arsenic compound. Low doses. 2 milligrams daily. Symptoms should present as natural illness within 6 to 8 weeks. He was poisoning her. Slowly. Making it look like she was getting sick naturally. The final photo was a note written on a piece of notebook paper. The handwriting was shaky, like someone had written it in a hurry. I'm sorry I helped him set you up. He said he'd hurt my mom if I didn't. But I can't let him hurt your mom too. He hurt mine bad enough. Use these to stop him. Danny. I sat up in bed, my mind racing. Danny had somehow gotten into Gary's safe. He had photographed everything, all the evidence of Gary's crimes across multiple states, all the proof I needed to show that Gary was a serial con artist and a murderer. But I was a wanted man. If I walked into a police station, they would arrest me on the spot for the burglary and restraining order violation. Gary would claim I faked these documents out of desperation. Without forensic analysis, without official investigation, these photos might not be enough. I needed someone else to have this evidence, someone who could verify it independently, someone the authorities would believe. I forwarded all the photos to Patricia with a message. This came from Danny, Gary's son. He got into Gary's safe. This is proof of everything. Gary is planning to murder my mother. Please help. Then I forwarded the photos to the local news station with a detailed explanation. Then I sent them to the FBI field office with every detail I could remember about Gary's pattern of targeting widows across multiple states. I wrote out a complete statement, documenting everything that had happened since Gary entered my mother's life. Every manipulation, every lie, every crime. I saved it in multiple places: cloud storage, email drafts, text files on my phone. If Gary got to me, if something happened to me, the evidence would still exist. As the sun came up, I made a decision. I was going to turn myself in, but I was going to do it publicly, with the media present, with the FBI aware of what was happening. I would surrender, but I would make sure Gary's crimes could not be buried. I drove toward the police station, but as I got closer, I saw something that made me stop. A news van was parked outside. Then another one pulled up. Then I saw FBI vehicles. My email to the news station had worked. They had started investigating overnight. I parked across the street and watched. A reporter was doing a live broadcast on the sidewalk. I could not hear what she was saying, but I could see her holding up a printed photo, one of the documents from Gary's safe. My phone rang. Patricia. Fernando, where are you? Outside the police station. I'm turning myself in. Wait. Don't move. The FBI just contacted me. They've been tracking a fraud ring operating across multiple western states. Your evidence connects all the cases they've been investigating. They want to talk to you, but not about the burglary. About Gary, Marcus Eldridge. Whatever his real name is my mother safe? They're sending agents to the house right now. I watched from my truck as more FBI vehicles arrived at the police station. An agent came outside and started talking to the news reporters. Within minutes, more news vans showed up. This was becoming a major story. Patricia called me back. The local DA just agreed to drop all charges against you related to the restraining order violation and the burglary. They're calling it justified given the circumstances and the evidence you uncovered. You need to come inside now. The FBI wants your statement. I walked across the street toward the police station. Reporters tried to stop me, asking questions, but I kept walking. An FBI agent met me at the door and escorted me inside. They put me in an interview room and 2 agents took my statement for over 3 hours. I told them everything. They showed me photos of Gary from their case files. Marcus Eldridge, Michael Patterson, Gary Davidson. 7 different identities, wanted in multiple states. They had been tracking him for years but could never quite catch him. He always stayed one step ahead, moving from state to state, changing identities, leaving no paper trail, until Danny had photographed everything in that safe. "We have enough to arrest him," one agent said. "We're executing a search warrant at the property right now." "What about my mother? Is she safe?" "We have paramedics on site. If he's been poisoning her like the documents suggest, she'll need immediate medical attention." They let me wait in a conference room while they coordinated the raid. I sat there staring at the wall, exhausted, terrified, hopeful. For the first time in months, someone was actually listening to me. Someone was actually doing something. 3 hours later, the agent returned. "We arrested Marcus Eldridge at the property. No resistance. We also recovered a substantial amount of evidence from the basement office that corroborates what your informant photographed." "My mother?" "She's been transported to the hospital. Blood tests show elevated levels of arsenic. The doctors say if we hadn't intervened when we did, she would have died within a month." I put my head in my hands and tried not to cry. They released me that evening. I walked out of the police station into a crowd of reporters, but I did not stop to talk to any of them. I just got in my truck and drove straight to the hospital. The nurses directed me to the 3rd floor. I found my mother's room and stood outside for a long time before knocking. I did not know what I was going to say. I did not know if she would even want to see me. I knocked softly. A weak voice said, "Come in." Mom was lying in the hospital bed, connected to an IV. She looked pale and thin. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Fernando." I sat down in the chair next to her bed. Neither of us spoke for a minute. "They told me everything," she finally said. "About Gary, about the poisoning, about all of it. I'm sorry I couldn't stop him sooner." She shook her head. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I chose him over you. I'm sorry I let him destroy your father's house. The house doesn't matter anymore. You're alive. That's what matters." "He told me I was pregnant," she said quietly. "I was so happy. I thought I was getting a second chance at having a family. But the doctors ran tests. I'm not pregnant. He made me take fake pregnancy tests. He bought them online. They always show positive. He used that to control me, to make me think we were building something real." I did not know what to say to that. "Your father would be so ashamed of me," she whispered. "No. Dad would understand. Gary is a professional manipulator. He's done this to other women. You're a victim, Mom. Just like Danny's mother. Just like all the others." The next several weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Gary, or Marcus Eldridge as his real name turned out to be, was charged with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, attempted murder, and a dozen other crimes across 4 states. The evidence from his safe was overwhelming. The FBI had been building a case against him for years, but they could never find enough evidence to make charges stick. Danny's photos had provided the missing pieces. The trial was fast-tracked because Marcus decided to plead guilty to avoid a possible death penalty charge for the attempted murder of my mother. He was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, I sat in the courtroom and watched him. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. When the judge read the sentence, he showed no emotion at all. The quitclaim deed, transferring my house to my mother, was voided by the court as part of a fraudulent scheme. The property was restored to my name. Additionally, the FBI seized Marcus's assets, which included money he had stolen from 7 different women over the past 15 years. As one of his victims, my mother received compensation. So did I, for legal fees and damages. It took 2 months to get the house back to livable condition. The renovations Marcus had done were cheap and poorly executed. I had to hire contractors to fix everything properly. I rebuilt my father's workshop in the garage, buying new tools to replace the ones Marcus had sold. I planted a new oak tree in the backyard, right where the original one had stood. It was not the same tree, but it was a start. Danny's mother, Sharon, completed her rehabilitation program. The shock of learning that Marcus was in prison seemed to help her recovery. She said she finally felt safe knowing he could not hurt her anymore. Danny moved back in with her in March. Before he left, I took him aside. "You saved my mother's life. You saved my life too, in a way. Thank you. I just did what I should have done a long time ago," he said. "I should have stopped him before he hurt anyone else. You were a kid in an impossible situation. You did the right thing when it mattered most." I gave him my phone number and told him to call me if he or his mother ever needed anything. He said he would. My mother went through months of therapy, physical therapy to recover from the arsenic poisoning, and psychological therapy to process the trauma of what Marcus had done to her. We rebuilt our relationship slowly. She moved into a small apartment across town. She said she could not live in the house on Maple Street anymore, that it held too many painful memories now. I understood. We had dinner together once a week. Sometimes we talked about Dad. Sometimes we talked about what happened. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. It was not the relationship we had before, but it was honest. And that was enough. The extended family slowly came around. Aunt Carmen called me in tears, apologizing for believing Marcus's lies. My cousin Rachel invited me to her birthday party. Uncle David sent me a long email explaining how sorry he was for cutting me off. I forgave them all. They had been manipulated just like everyone else. In November, almost exactly 1 year after Marcus had kicked me out of my own house, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at 427 Maple Street. The family came. Mom came. Even Jake came, bringing his new girlfriend. We ate in the dining room, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like home. After everyone left, I stood in my father's workshop, running my hand over the new workbench I had built. I thought about everything that had happened, how close I came to losing everything, how easy it is for a skilled manipulator to divide a family and destroy lives. But I also thought about resilience, about persistence, about fighting for what is right, even when the whole world seems to be against you. My father built this house with his own hands. He left it to me because he trusted me to protect it. And after everything, after all the lies and manipulation and legal battles, I did protect it. Not just the physical structure, but what it represented. Family, legacy, home. I learned that legal documents matter, that you should never sign anything without reading it carefully, no matter who is asking. I learned that con artists are professionals who know exactly how to exploit grief and loneliness. I learned that the legal system can be manipulated, but eventually, the truth comes out if you fight hard enough. Most importantly, I learned that forgiveness is possible, but it takes time. My mother made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she was a victim too. We both lost something when Marcus came into our lives, but we both survived. And survival is worth something. The house is quiet now, just me and the memories, but they are good memories again. I can walk through these rooms and remember my father without pain. I can sit in his workshop and feel his presence. I can look at the young oak tree in the backyard and imagine it growing tall and strong, just like the one he planted when I was born. This is my home, my father's legacy, and no one will ever take it from me again. I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your life who seemed trustworthy at first, but turned out to be manipulating you or your family? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story meant something to you, if it helped you understand the warning signs of manipulation, or gave you hope that justice is possible even when things seem hopeless, please consider hitting that like button. It helps more people find these stories and maybe prevents someone else from falling victim to a con artist like Marcus. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. I share stories like this because I believe we learn from each other's experiences. Every story here is a lesson, a warning, or a source of hope for someone who needs it. Finally, if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this story, someone who is dealing with family manipulation or legal battles over property or inheritance, please share this video with them. Sometimes knowing you are not alone in the fight makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you never have to face what I faced. But if you do, I hope my experience gives you the strength to keep fighting. Justice is possible. Truth matters. And home is worth protecting. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.